Welcome to Divorce TV. I'm your host, Wally Marcus, and our topic today is Dinosaur Divorce, which I know may sound a little strange to you at first, but we'll explain. My guest is Laurie Krasny Brown, and she is the author of a book called Dinosaurs Divorce, which is one of my favorite divorce books for children, and I really find it incredibly helpful in my practice, as I know many of my colleagues are. Laurie's on our telephone. On the telephone. Laurie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Where? I'm trying to remember where you are. You're on...
I'm in New York City.
You're in New York City?
On West 11th Street.
Oh, you're going back to your graduate school haunts in the...
Well, actually, I grew up in New York City.
You did. That's good. Well, I was going to say, tell us a little bit about yourself, so we have a little bit of your background before we start talking about the book.
So these are my roots here in New York, and they do say, that you find your way back there so often. So it's great to be living here much of the time. And so I have this background in educational psychology and research. And actually, I went to Cornell as an undergraduate and majored in was called Child Development and Family Relationships. And I remember thinking that how would I ever be spontaneous as a parent or a wife, because I was getting all this academic training, but that is just not a problem. So I have this background, and I have a master's degree in educational psychology, and then I did some really interesting, I had some interesting jobs, clinical psychology jobs, and selling educational toys at FAO Schwartz, and working with advertisers, doing marketing research, and so on. But I did eventually go back to school to in a program called the Center for Research in Children's Television. And there I got to do some really wonderful basic research. So I have all this training, and I guess eventually it has come in very handy in writing books for children.
Oh, you certainly do a great job at it. On Dinosaurs Divorce, how did you get the idea for the book in the first place?
Right. Well, actually, it was my husband, Mark Brown's idea. We had already done one book together. In fact, we met professionally. I actually hired him as a consultant while I was still at Harvard. So we were colleagues before we were boyfriend, girlfriend. You
were in a situation where you could have, if you had you could have fired him instead of getting divorced if you ever went that route.
I know. So we did a book together called The Bionic Bunny Show. That was our first book, which did very well. It was really fun. It was about sort of debunking superheroes and explaining what goes on behind the screen. And this Dinosaurs Divorce was our second book, and it came about because Mark had to go through a divorce, and he said he couldn't find a book he liked to use with his sons, Tolan and Tucker, who became my stepsons, and such a book was needed, and I was the one to write it. And I really resisted. I thought it would be kind of depressing to have to work through that, but I consented. And one reason I consented is because I did go and look at everything I could find that was available for children, and I could see that there was something missing, that maybe there was a niche we could fill.
That's good. And you certainly, when I look at it, you hit all the important points in that one. But how did you get into why dinosaurs?
Right. I think Mark had already done a book about. No, that was pigs. That was a book about manners. No, I guess maybe he hadn't used dinosaurs, but it came up because for several reasons. We knew that they were, albeit extinct, creatures that are of interest to many kids. And there are
it's interesting. You say that. I was reading through it. I never really made that connection, but I think it's actually very, very smart on your part.
Well, and you may sense this too in your work when if you are involved with the children in the family at all, or from your own family, when you remove the characters in a story a little bit from real life, it can be easier and less threatening to talk about something serious. Secondly, it removes the issue of race when everyone can be green. We don't have to, sort of mete out and make sure that we have a diverse population of children in the book. So it makes it just more natural in a way. Also, as the illustrator, Mark is always looking for opportunities for humor, and using dinosaurs provided that. We really thought it through, and we felt that it was going to work better for us than actual children.
I like the expressions on the dinosaurs. You're right, the expressions on the dinosaurs that way. And I guess to me, I was thinking about it. You're right. Yeah. By doing the something which is sort of not real, it's like science fiction to some extent. Makes it makes it much more acceptable to doing that one. I think we're going to show a few of the pages of a book now. We're going to go through them. I'll tell you because I know since you're on, I've sent you the pictures. You don't know what's on the screen, but let's talk a little bit. We're going to put a few of them on the screen. The first one's the opening, the Dinosaurs Divorce. A guide, and you use it. It's interesting. It's a guide for changing families on this one. What was the?
I think, I know, I was trying to remember, Wally, why we added that. I think it was to help someone who was deciding whether to pick up the book or, read the book. We wanted to give them a clue that it was nonfiction. Yep. It wasn't actually about dinosaurs divorcing.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. We're on the cover of the book now, and you have a bird up there, and you have a... I assume it's a snake.
A little snake.
And the fellow, I guess the child there was sort of contemplating. And you're thinking, I'm not sure you can always go back and recreate what the thought was when you did that. But
I don't think I got too involved in planning the title page. You'd have to catch Mark and ask him about that. I think he likes to draw those things, and maybe it seemed friendly to do that. Although, for most of the pages of the book, even though I'm the author, not the illustrator, because it's a picture book, I found that I just wanted to and sort of had to put art notes for what I was picturing on every page so that he would have that information to use or not use, or we could debate it. But in the case of the cover page, a detail like that, I don't remember having any input.
Let's go to the next slide, if we can. Okay, this is Why Parents Divorce.
Yeah.
And I like the way you did on that one, where you sort of have the child really illustrating it in the middle.
Yeah.
I think that was very, is where they often feel unheard. And that one, and the two parents shouting at each other, and the two parents not talking to each other.
But when you do mediation, you're not usually talking to the children, are you? You're talking to the adults, right?
Yeah, we're talking to the adults, and it's strange because the children are such an important part of it. And I hear so much about them. Every once in a while, there've been situations where I run into the parents with the children, and that's who this person is. Yeah. But and in some of the mediation training, actually, they encourage you to bring the children in, but we don't. But what we do have sometimes the parents bring the pictures of their children, put them on the table.
Yeah. Well, the most important sentence on that page spread is, "You are not to blame if your parents get divorced." We were very clear that we needed to say that because it's usually the case.
Okay, this is a two-page spread. Yeah. So let's go to the second page of this one too.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, you'll see the second part about this is that page. I'm losing the page numbers on it, but this is the second half of that one where somebody's drinking. I guess one of the parents is drinking, leaving that one. But yeah, it really captures it. I think that's why the book's always been powerful for me. Is that what you've illustrated and written about is what we see all the time.
Wow. Well, that's a real compliment. And the book, is 25 years old, and it's still doing very well. It amazes me.
Yeah, well, I can, as I said, I think I started doing mediation because I thought that, I couldn't take what, divorces were doing to kids. And I think this really, really helps them a lot. Let's go to the next slide, which is what about you, which I thought was also very significant in doing that because sometimes the children do get lost in the shuffle here.
Yeah, I know. Some of these expressions are pretty funny.
Yeah, but once again, I think that you make it more acceptable and people more than do that. Let's go to the second page in this one, too, so we can see that one as well.
We wanted to, of course, acknowledge, let kids see this book, unlike a lot of other books about divorce that I had looked at, isn't about one particular child. It isn't one story, one family story, because how could one family story be much harder for every child in that situation to find herself in one family story, because it could differ from their situation. So the goal here is so that any child in this situation could relate to
and I think relate's the key word. I think you really do relate. They're not green, but they can relate to it in a very good way. Next slide, if we can. Okay, this is after the divorce, which as a mediator I don't get involved in too much, but I think it was good, once again, telling some of the people some of the issues. I like that, the step-parents, the other things that you talked about here, which were really that one. I don't know if people who are watching this are going to be able to read all the captions on it, so I encourage you to go out and buy the book so you can see that or get it in the library on that one. Next slide, please. This one intrigued me when I saw this one. I think you and I talked about this earlier. This is celebrating holidays, which is...
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I was curious why you... and it's an issue that certainly comes up a lot. You have the Hanukkah menorah on one side and the Christmas tree on the other. What was...
Yeah. Well, that's personal. I'm Jewish, and Mark actually has joined me being somewhat Jewish, but he celebrated Christmas, so we had a lot of holidays going on.
Although I've got to tell you, Laurie, when we've done mediation, sometimes it's been helpful because if you have that kind of a family, that you don't have to argue who's going to spend Christmas, who's going to spend Hanukkah with the people. They divides up. But you've got that kid divided right in the middle there, which is
I know.
But as I said, we've worked out over the years those solutions, and I think they're somewhat hard the first time, but on that one. But that one sort of like. I caught my interest right off the bat. Next slide, please. Okay, and this, I guess, is the last page of the book that we're looking at now. Dinosaur. That's actually maybe the first time I've seen the tail on the dinosaur. I just realized.
Really?
So be careful it doesn't get stuck in the wheels.
Swept up.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, did it. I think you can take the slide off this way. I think we've gone through them all. And back to me, not the dinosaur. How did your own experiences sort of influence the book?
Well, I don't think I would have felt qualified to write this book, even with academic training that was relevant, if I hadn't experienced divorce in my own life. My parents divorced, so I was the child in the middle.
How old were you at that point?
Around 11 or 12.
Tough age.
And then I divorced. I was married before, and so I was in a divorce as the adult. And then I watched Mark and his sons and became the step-parent. So I had, plenty of first-hand experience to bring.
Do you think you could have written it without that? I mean, the reason I ask this, people ask me, when I'm mediating sometimes, can you mediate? If I haven't gone through the divorce, they think, somehow I can't mediate the case or be empathetic to it.
Well, as I say, all the academic training in the world might not equip you the same way as living through it from several different sides. It just gave me so much more insight. And there are things that are in the book that I would never know to put in there if I hadn't had those experiences. For example, I might have tried to write it, I don't know, but I think it meant more to me to write it as well. For example, when you go back to, you're not going back, but
I'm not sure.
When we show
Richard, can you plug them back? What was the slide you want to see?
Children's expressions.
Let's see if we can bring the slide back. What about you?
Yeah.
Which one?
Relieved.
Relieved?
See, yeah, there's one.
Okay, next page.
There's one.
Relieved, okay, I see it. Bottom
See
left, girl, little girl.
Well, I don't know that I would have put that, but in my own childhood, I remember that there was a lot of conflict between my parents, and when they did finally separate, life was much calmer. I mean, there may have been sadnesses or problems, but I remember feeling, phew, it's much more peaceful now for me. So
That's good.
Things like that. I'm not sure I would have known some of those things.
That's good. Have you gotten feedback from children on this?
Feedback?
On the book?
We have lots of feedback. Yeah, the book has had very strong reviews. It was one of the New York Times best books of the year when it was published, starred reviews. Actually, I think it was picked up by American Psychological Association. Very strong sales, international sales. I mean, it's published in China and countries.
We can take the
I
slide off
would
the
just
screen,
never
by the
expect.
way.
And letters, to answer your question about children and parents.
Has it been translated in other languages?
Yeah, it has. That amazed me because some of the books we've done, although I'm trying to make them have a timelessness, I don't want to write trendy books. I want them to stay in print and be relevant for a long time. But I didn't expect such a different culture. Germany, it's been published in France, in Brazil, in Portuguese, but also more recently in China. And I thought that was really surprising because I just didn't expect it to translate to such a different place.
I mean, it's interesting because we're very conscious of cultural differences in marriage. I haven't really thought a lot about the cultural differences with the children. But what you seem to be saying is the children are much more universal. Maybe
something's happening. I haven't had a chance to talk to those publishers. I wish I did, to know what they were thinking when they approached us. But anyway, and we have gotten, of course, Mark Brown, my husband, gets lots and lots of fan mail. But for this book, and some of the other more serious books we've written together, worked on together, I have received letters too. And some of those letters, one really heartfelt letter makes it all really worthwhile.
Yeah, I know.
It's so moving.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I've been fortunate to have that happen to me occasionally as well. Just out of curiosity, do you have any sense of how many overall books of the copies have been sold?
Oh gosh, it would be a wild guess, but it's in the 20th printing. It's been printed 20 times, so that tells us something.
You wrote the book in 1986. We were talking about that earlier. So actually, when I started mediating, would you make any revisions or changes today?
Right. Yeah, I thought, well, not too many, I'm happy to report. But one thing that kind of seems, it sort of shrieks at me a little bit is, let's see. Oh, yeah, here it is. Right at the beginning, it says, divorce takes place between mothers and fathers. Well, since 1986, marriages have begun to look different. And I'm now a little less sure that I want to just say mothers and fathers. I might, if I wrote it now, I might want to say divorce takes place between parents, or I'm not sure how I would reword it.
So we're dealing with the gender.
Out at me.
You were dealing with the gender issue. That was the question too.
Issue,
I mean,
exactly.
there is no reference to that, but I mean, although I've got to tell you once again, in my experiences, I don't think that changes much.
Right.
The wording may change, but I think the issues are about the same.
Right, I agree. But other than that, I didn't find, sometimes when you've done a project and then you put it away and then you look at it again, you're embarrassed or sometimes you're pleased. And in this case, I didn't find a lot of things that bothered me.
I would tell you, having looked at the book, I think those are you hit the universals, and a lot of those things.
Wow. Well, that was
changed.
The goal. That's great.
Although,
I'm glad you think so.
You and I have sort of tossed this one around a little bit too. I think you may come back to me on this one, is because I think we talked about, you wrote the book in '85, I started mediating in '85, and I think mediation has come in to the process. And you talk a little bit about attorneys in the book, but you don't address other matters. I'm not sure how, and once again, I'm not sure even how you could have done that. But
yeah. Well, mediation, for example, I think it's only 32 pages, mind you, and it's a picture book, and you have to be very mindful not to put words in that are going to be hard to illustrate, or that are going to be just too dense, too complicated. And actually, mediation itself, I wonder if didn't really consider it, to be honest, but because it seems like an adult activity. But also, when you do mediation, aren't you sort of thinking that the outcome might be that they don't get divorced?
What I've always said, that's a good question, Laurie. I think in mediation you don't burn your bridges, is the way I sort of phrased it. And so there's a possibility, and there's sometimes epiphanies, and you come back and do that. But I think, the reason I sort of say that is I always think that mediation is very child-oriented. So, it goes more hand in hand, I think, and philosophically with you. But
well, I think if we had tried to explain what that was, it's a little beyond
I understand.
5-year-old, I think. And also, I didn't want to make it confusing and have children. I tried to be quite clear that most of the time this is a final decision, and not to raise children's hopes that if only they try harder, their parents will reunite. Occasionally it happens, but I didn't want to set that up.
I understand. That makes sense.
Yeah.
On that one. And I think, you were targeting a certain group here, too, and we do that one. I noticed that the book was dedicated to Tolland and Tucker, and you sort of mentioned them earlier on. So I didn't know when I was seeing the dedication, I didn't know who they are. Now I have a better sense of who they are.
They were they're my stepsons. And when I met them, let's see, they were already, Tucker's younger. He was about 5, and Tolland was 8. So, and when Mark and I got married, they were, I think, around 8 and 11, so it took a while. But they were, of course, at the wedding, and actually it was very sweet. They really were very sweet. Tucker was the ring bearer, and my father wasn't alive, and so I asked Tolland if he would accompany me, because I explained that usually, it would be like that, and even though he wasn't my father,
that's touching.
I would be so honored, and so he did, and so they were very gracious with us. It was very nice, because of course children have, all kinds of feelings about this.
Then you want to give us an update on Tucker and Tolland now?
Right. Well, I can report that they are both married, and they seem pretty happy about it. We really like both their wives, and Tolland now has children. He's a great father. It's so impressive to me. I think, quite honestly, that he learned some of his parenting skills. I can see where he could have gotten them from a lot of places, including just who he is. But I bet he learned from the mistakes of all his various parents, and sort of vowed, I'm not going to do that. That won't happen to me. I haven't had that conversation with him, but maybe I will. Yeah. And Tucker just got married last year, and he's in Portland, Oregon. He's
That's
great.
Good.
He's just, so they've both survived and prospered.
Well, as I said, I've felt over the years is that the divorce process is I always use the line, so if you can't have a good marriage, have a good divorce. But I think that the process can be more damaging to the kids than the actual divorce itself. Sometimes the kids are happier.
Yeah, exactly.
In the beginning of the book, you go through a sort of vocabulary list, which I thought was sort of interesting, also for the children, because those are things that they. And you explained them in very good non-legal terms. But how did you you just pick the words?
Hmm?
Laurie?
What did you say?
How did you get to? How was your?
Oh, well, some of the words are in the book, most of them. So I just wanted to make sure they could be explained. I mean, because they're picture books for children, let's say 4 to 8, but of course they could be older, and I guess conceivably they could be younger, and they could be teenagers, they could be lots of ages, but they're aimed at young children. You sort of ideally imagine a book like this one, especially, being presented, at least the first time, with an adult. You know, whether it's the parent or some other adult, hopeful adult, hopefully. And so when these words come up, I really wanted to have a way to explain them. So this could be a conversation. You know, you might not even go through all these words when you're reading the picture book, but they're there. And the other words, I felt, were germane to the things we were talking about. So, you know, it wasn't that hard. It was just editing. I mean, these books are deceptively simple. In order to write this book, the only way I know how to do it is to just do all this research,
Laurie?
And read so much and then pare it down and, you know, so it came out to be this list.
Laurie, we're believe it or not, running out of time.
Yep.
It has been fascinating talking to you. I didn't realize you were in New York City, but where I'll be next week, actually.
Oh, my gosh.
We have a wedding in Terrytown, so I'm looking forward to going to that, which will confuse the people a lot because we're doing this one. So,
oh, that sounds great.
And anyway, but thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, and we appreciate you being a guest and talking about Dinosaurs Divorce. And I don't know if there's going to be any prequels or sequels, but we'll keep an eye on it. And I strongly recommend people at this point to read your book and learn it. And I think it's actually, even if you don't have children, I think it teaches you a lot about divorces, and it'll make the divorce situation significantly easier for you.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. Again,
thank
I really
you.
Appreciate it.
Hopefully we'll get to meet in live one day. But once again, I want to thank everybody for watching Divorce TV, which you've been watching with Wally Marcus, your host, and our topic has been Dinosaurs Divorce, with my very special guest, Laurie Krasny Brown, who wrote the book with her husband, Mark Brown. Thank you for watching.